It started with something so small, you wouldn't believe it, a single parking spot. But in this neighborhood, that tiny patch of pavement became the battlefield for one of the most ruthless HOA disputes you'll ever hear. Imagine waking up to find your rights stripped away, your property disrespected, and your freedom threatened, not by strangers, but by the very people who claim to protect the community. The deeper this fight went, the darker it became, until the homeowner uncovered a way to flip the script entirely. But here's the question. When the HOA came after what was his, did they realize he held the one thing that could destroy everything they built? At first glance, life on this quiet street seemed picture-perfect. Families walked their dogs in the evenings, kids rode bikes along the cul-de-sac, and every front yard looked like it had been lifted straight from a real estate brochure. Among the neighbors was one homeowner who fit right into the rhythm of the community. Hard-working, proud of their home, and never one to stir up trouble, they believed they had found a safe place to settle in peace. But like many neighborhoods wrapped in the glossy promise of an HOA, that peace came with strings attached. Letters slipped into mailboxes with warnings about paint colors, fines for grass growing half an inch too high, and the constant hum of rules whispered through community meetings. Still, the homeowner kept their head down, quietly following along, never imagining that something as ordinary as where they park their car or how they use their property could ignite a battle. Beneath the calm surface of this neighborhood, tension was already building, a clash between control and independence, between power on paper and the simple right to live freely in one's own home. And for this homeowner, that storm was about to break. What started as everyday life in a perfect community would soon turn into a fight that no one on that street would forget. At first, the signs of trouble came quietly, almost too quietly to notice. A letter slipped into the mailbox with the HOA's familiar letterhead, formal, sharp, and cold. It claimed the homeowner had violated a rule about unauthorized parking. At first, it seemed like an honest mistake. After all, the spot they had been using for years was on the same stretch of road everyone else parked on. Neighbors often lined the curb during weekends or family gatherings, and nobody ever thought twice about it. But unlike the others, this homeowner's car was suddenly singled out. The letter demanded that the vehicle be moved immediately or face a fine. Confused, the homeowner shrugged it off, assuming it was a mix-up. But the next morning, another note appeared, this one less polite, stamped with a warning that continued violations could lead to escalating fines or even legal action. The intimidation had begun. Within weeks, the HOA ramped up its pressure. Patrol cars, unmarked, yet suspiciously circling, began passing by the house at odd hours, almost as if waiting to catch the homeowner doing something wrong. Other residents whispered that board members were watching, keeping track of when the car was parked and for how long. It wasn't just about a parking spot anymore. It was about control. The fines came next. Small at first, $50, then $100, but growing quickly into hundreds of dollars for each supposed violation. The homeowner appealed, but every email was ignored. Every phone call redirected, every meeting cut short with the same dismissive phrase, "It's the rules." That phrase became a weapon. Neighbors who once waved from their driveways grew cold and distant, as if afraid that standing too close might put them on the HOA's radar. Some whispered behind closed doors that the board had been targeting families before, but few dared to speak openly. And yet, others seemed to relish the drama, quietly enjoying the power games being played against someone who dared not fall perfectly in line. The homeowner tried everything to comply, moving the car, asking for clarification, even parking farther away, but each attempt was met with new accusations. The rules seemed to shift like sand beneath their feet. What was allowed yesterday was suddenly forbidden today. Each letter dripped with arrogance, written not to resolve, but to punish. Then came the ultimate insult. The HOA officially revoked the homeowner's right to park in front of their own property. They claimed the road was under their authority, that they had the power to dictate every inch of asphalt. It wasn't just a warning anymore. It was a declaration. And that's when the homeowner realized this wasn't about a single parking spot. It was about sending a message. The board wanted control. Absolute, unquestioned control. But what the HOA didn't know was that the homeowner wasn't as powerless as they seemed. Buried in old property records was a piece of information the board had either overlooked or underestimated, a legal detail that changed everything. The road, the very stretch of pavement the HOA claimed as theirs, wasn't under their authority at all. In fact, the homeowner had a stake in it no one had bothered to check. While the board continued its campaign of harassment, stacking fines, sending threats, and parading its false authority, the homeowner began to quietly prepare. They dug through county records, consulted with local officials, and pieced together documents that painted a very different story. A story in which the HOA wasn't the enforcer, but the intruder. Every new letter from the board became fuel. Every fine added to the pile only strengthened the homeowner's resolve. What the HOA believed was intimidation was, in truth, the spark of rebellion. The breaking point came one afternoon when the HOA sent a final notice. Pay thousands in accumulated fines or face legal consequences. It was meant to be the nail in the coffin. But instead, it marked the beginning of the homeowner's counterattack. Because with the evidence in hand, the homeowner was no longer playing defense. They were preparing to turn the tables in a way no one on that street saw coming. The battle for a parking spot was about to become something much, much bigger. And when the truth came out, it wouldn't just be the homeowner's car that was protected. It would be the HOA's entire authority that was thrown into question. The homeowner had been pushed, humiliated, and cornered. But the board's arrogance blinded them to the storm they had unleashed. And when that storm broke, it wouldn't just wash away their petty rules. It might destroy everything they had built. The question now was simple. Would the HOA back down when faced with the truth? Or would they double down, dragging the neighborhood into a war that no one would escape unscathed? The breaking point arrived not with a whisper, but with a storm. By now, the HOA believed they had cornered the homeowner completely. Thousands of dollars in fines had been issued. Threats of liens dangled over the property, and a final letter arrived that felt less like a notice and more like a death sentence. Pay up or face legal action. The board expected fear. They expected submission, but instead they got defiance. The homeowner had spent sleepless nights combing through county records, deeds, and dusty legal documents that no one else bothered to read. And within those papers lay the truth, the kind of truth that turned the entire game on its head. The HOA did not own the road. In fact, the very street they claimed authority over legally fell under the homeowner's ownership rights. Every letter, every fine, every arrogant warning had been built on a lie. The next HOA meeting was supposed to be routine. Residents gathered in the community hall, sipping coffee from paper cups as board members prepared to read their list of grievances. But the homeowner was there, too, this time not as a target, but as a force. When the board tried to rattle off the latest violations, the homeowner stood and placed a thick folder of documents on the table. The room went silent. The homeowner's voice didn't waver. With calm precision, they laid out the facts. The road was never HOA property, never under their jurisdiction, never theirs to control. Deeds and plats confirmed it. County maps backed it. Legal authority rested not with the HOA, but with the very person they had tried to bully into submission. Faces around the room shifted, shock, disbelief, even amusement. Neighbors who had watched quietly from the sidelines now leaned in, murmuring to each other. For the first time, the balance of power tilted. The board members scrambled, their smug confidence crumbling. One tried to brush it off, claiming interpretation issues. Another insisted it was a clerical error. But the homeowner wasn't finished. They revealed not only the ownership of the road, but the implications. If the HOA continued their harassment, they could be charged with overreach, trespassing, even fraud. The most devastating blow came when the homeowner announced that, legally, they could restrict access to the road entirely. The very street the HOA lived on could be declared unbuildable, unmaintainable, and unusable, all because of the board's arrogance. The silence in that hall was deafening. Neighbors who once avoided eye contact were now staring openly at the board, some with anger, others with thinly veiled satisfaction. The whispers spread like wildfire. The HOA had overstepped, and now they were exposed. But the board, cornered and desperate, tried one last tactic: intimidation. They raised their voices, threatening counter-lawsuits, painting the homeowner as a troublemaker who wanted to destroy the community. It was a final gasp, the roar of a beast that had already lost the fight. The homeowner didn't flinch. They pulled out one last piece of paper, an official letter from the county confirming the road's legal status and acknowledging their rights over it. With that, the HOA's last defense shattered. The room erupted. Some neighbors cheered under their breath. Others shook their heads in disbelief. The once untouchable board members now sat pale and humiliated, stripped of the authority they had wielded like a weapon. The climax wasn't just in the revelation of the truth, it was in the reversal of power. For months, the homeowner had endured threats, fines, and harassment. Now, in one decisive moment, they had not only defended their rights, but exposed the HOA for the fraud it had become. And yet, this was not the end, because with power comes choice. The homeowner now held the cards. They could pursue legal action, dismantle the HOA's control, or tighten their grip on the road in ways that would change the neighborhood forever. What began as a petty dispute over a parking spot had grown into a battle for control of the entire street. The HOA had tried to bury them under paperwork, intimidation, and fear. Instead, they had handed the homeowner the very weapon that could destroy them. And as the board members sat in silence, their faces burning with humiliation, one question hung heavy in the air: what would the homeowner do next? When the meeting ended, the board members shuffled out of the room in silence, their shoulders slumped, their usual smirks erased. For months, they had acted like kings of the neighborhood, brandishing their power like a weapon. But now they were exposed for what they truly were: people hiding behind rules that never belonged to them in the first place. The homeowner didn't celebrate that night. Instead, they sat quietly at their kitchen table, staring at the stack of papers that had turned the tide. Relief washed over them, yes, but so did something heavier: responsibility. Because now, everyone knew the truth. The road was theirs, not the HOA's. And with that truth came a decision that could reshape the neighborhood forever. Neighbors began reaching out, one by one. Some knocked on the door with sheepish smiles, apologizing for the way they'd stayed silent during the ordeal. Others sent messages of support, relieved that someone had finally stood up to the board. A few, emboldened by the victory, started whispering about their own grievances: petty fines, invasive inspections, threats that had kept them quiet for too long. The HOA's power had cracked, and the homeowner realized this wasn't just about a parking spot anymore. It was about giving the community back its freedom. In the weeks that followed, the board scrambled to repair its image. They issued carefully worded statements, trying to spin the confrontation as a misunderstanding. But their words rang hollow. People had seen the evidence with their own eyes. They had heard the county's confirmation. The board had no ground left to stand on, and the homeowners they once ruled over were no longer afraid. The homeowner had options, and plenty of them. Legally, they could shut down access to the road altogether. They could sue for damages, demand repayment for every bogus fine, and hold the board accountable for months of harassment. But instead, they chose a different path. They stood up at the next meeting, the same hall where the board had tried to humiliate them, and made a declaration that stunned the room. "I don't want to destroy this community," they said. "I want to save it. And the only way forward is without this HOA abusing its power." The room erupted in applause. For the first time in years, homeowners felt like their voices mattered. What followed was nothing short of a revolution. Residents organized petitions, calling for a vote to strip the HOA of its authority. With the board's credibility shattered, the process moved quickly. Neighbors who had once cowered now stood tall, demanding change. And in a matter of weeks, the same group that had bullied, fined, and harassed was officially dissolved. The board members left in disgrace, some selling their homes and moving away, unable to face the community they had once controlled. Others stayed, quieter now, living under the very rules they had tried to enforce. Only this time, those rules were decided collectively, not dictated from above. As for the homeowner, life slowly returned to normal. They parked in front of their house without fear of letters, fines, or threats. Children played on the road again without the watchful eyes of self-appointed enforcers. The neighborhood, once tense and divided, began to heal. But the impact of the battle went beyond a single street. Word spread to nearby communities. Stories passed from one homeowner to another like a cautionary tale. Other neighborhoods began questioning their own boards, checking deeds, digging into county records. The myth of the all-powerful HOA had been cracked wide open, and people realized they had more control than they'd been led to believe. The homeowner often thought about how close they'd come to giving in, how tempting it had been, in the darkest moments, to just pay the fines and stay quiet. But standing up, even when it seemed impossible, had changed everything. The lesson was clear. Power only works when people believe in it. The HOA had thrived on fear, intimidation, and silence. The moment someone stood up, their authority crumbled like dust in the wind. Years later, neighbors would still talk about the night it all changed. They'd point to the community hall and say, "That's where the board was defeated. That's where we took back our street." And every time, the homeowner would smile quietly, not out of pride, but out of relief. Relief that they had refused to back down, even when the odds seemed stacked against them. Because sometimes the most ordinary battles, a parking spot, a patch of pavement, reveals something extraordinary. They show us how fragile control really is and how powerful it can be when ordinary people refuse to surrender their rights. And so the story ended not with destruction, but with freedom. A community freed from the grip of a petty board. A homeowner freed from harassment. And a reminder to everyone watching, when you know your rights, no one, not even the loudest, most arrogant HOA, can take them away. So here's the question. If it happened on this street, could it happen on yours?